Waiting for the streaming software to connect, and then we will begin. And that just takes a moment here, so pretty soon. There we go. It looks like we are all connected and ready to go. Perfect. All right, so let's get started. I could take these off now because I can't see without them. So thank you so much for joining us today. I am Amber Bocknek. I'm a physician based out of Ontario, Canada, and this is Longevanity, the intersection where longevity and aesthetics all come together. So before we really dive into today's topic, it's just really important for everybody to know the topics we cover are really intended for educational advice. They're not medical advice. For that, you really do need the personalized care of your individual care provider, physician, nurse practitioner, the person you count on most for that. So please, again, understand this is as educational content and is not actually intended to diagnose, prevent, cure, or treat disease. So again, anything you hear about here, please be sure to run it by your own care provider first. So there we go. That said, let's dive in today. I want to talk about some of the advances in healthy aging, pro-aging. You know, whether you use the term anti-aging or pro-aging, really what we're really talking about here is living your best life, getting the most out of life, and really having quality as we continue to go forward in life. And this is really an exciting, emerging, and ever-changing area of medicine and wellness. So there's lots going on there, and I think our understanding about what's happening in the natural situation and things we can do to optimize and slow this trajectory down are becoming more and more mainstream and better studied and understood all the time. So I was just at a conference this past weekend in San Diego, very much focused on cognitive healthy aging and trying to preserve brain function, because really when you boil it down to quality of life really depends on a couple of key variables. You want to kind of keep your mental state together, because if you don't have your cognition, you really can't enjoy the other facets of life. You can't enjoy your family, your surroundings. You know, everything can go quite downhill quite quickly with loss of cognitive function. So this was very much cognitively focused, but it is, of course, all encompassing. There isn't just one thing that helps keep your brain healthy. It's actually many things that keep your brain healthy. And a lot of these things keep the rest of your body healthy. So there was a bigger, broader picture of what healthy aging means and how to age well. And really, there's no time like the present. So you don't want to wait until you're having all these changes. You want to try to intervene as soon as you can. Basically, a way to think about it is we are all biological systems. And yes, absolutely, we are going to see some decline over time as we continue to get older. But the steepness of that decline can be made shallower or less by a number of just fundamental health changes. And basically, the earlier you start intervening, the sooner you change that slope. So instead of having a big decline and then making changes much later, if you start to notice decline and then you make change, you can keep your function much higher than what it would otherwise be if you started later. So hence, no time like the present. We can't go back in time and change lifestyle, but certainly we can start to become much more mindful of our day-to-day health choices to give ourselves a better present day, win today, but most importantly, win tomorrow. So what all does that encompass? Well, it all boils down to what we're made of. And actually, a lot of this goes back into ancestral times. Again, the human species has been around for thousands of years. And the planet here, Earth, that we have grown up on, and the environmental factors around us have shaped our human species to be what it is today. So we have to give homage to where we've come from. And at its deepest level, we're just very sophisticated biochemistry. So again, acknowledging that and working with our ancestral development and our biochemistry can sometimes really help to benefit us. So this divides into different categories. So one of the main categories that I would say is very important is nutrition. So there are lots of fad diets, and there's a ton of different conflicting dietary advice out there. And the bottom line is balanced diets tend to be the healthiest. And diets that have the least amount of processed food and the least amount of simple sugars tend to be the most beneficial for the vast majority of people. Now, keep in mind, this is just general dietary education, and it may not be relevant with your specific health issues. So again, if you have something else going on in the background, please do run these dietary suggestions past your doctor before implementing them. Most people in nutrition would agree that a diverse, plentiful diet in multiple colored fruits and vegetables with healthy proteins is really the best way to go. And with that said, trying to get diversity is important. Trying to get a reasonable amount of fiber is important. And protein is important. And sometimes the protein component can be difficult. Like, people will struggle in different areas. But as a generalization for healthy adults, protein intake is really best about a gram for every pound of weight you have. So again, and sometimes even a little more. Now, if you have kidney issues, then it may be a little bit less than that. But again, about a pound for a pound. So a 150-pound person might benefit from 120 to 150 grams of protein per day. Protein is very important because it sustains muscle. It has a lower glycemic index. It doesn't raise blood sugar. And again, sugar is one of these issues where people run into trouble with irritation to their little fine blood vessels, and we can see all kinds of issues happen. People can become insensitive to their own insulin, and that's the development of diabetes. And that process ultimately can lead to inflammation and irritation inside the small little blood vessels, which can ultimately cause hardening of the arteries and organ trouble as heart attack and stroke and some of the other difficulties we see. So again, controlling blood sugar, having healthy protein to create healthy muscle is all extremely important. And from there, it gets into some other facets of this, and this is where exercise ties in. So exercise is not just about looking good. Exercise activates the muscles in your body, and the strain on the muscles stimulates them to grow and become more plentiful. In aging, we very commonly see the loss of muscle. The medical term for this is sarcopenia. And sarcopenia can be harmful as a marker of frailty, as well as setting an individual up for falls and again, mobility issues and the like. But the presence of muscle isn't about being buff or being cut. Muscle is a very metabolically active tissue. It's a very large organ in our body. And again, a lot of our fuel utilization is very much affected by it because it's, again, metabolically quite active in comparison to fat, which is a storage form where we don't burn as well. So we really want to try to preserve and maintain our muscle bulk as well as we can. The other thing about exercise, not only does it help in the muscles, but it's good for all of our tissues in general. Exercise stimulates most of the little cells in our body. Certain types of exercise have different impacts in different things, but in general, exercise really helps the mitochondria to be very, very helpful. Now, I know it's lunch hour, and we're talking about mitochondria, which again is sometimes a little bit science heavy, but think of them as the little energy burning units in every single cell. So for your cells to function, they need to convert the energy that you take from your food sources into usable energy for your cell. Your individual cells do not use like sugar, glucose, proteins, the amino acids, and fats, the fatty acids. They take those things and then they're chemically converted into something called ATP. So that's usable cellular energy. But the ability to effectively pull from what you take in your diet and create energy that you can use for your day-to-day is regulated in your cells, and the mitochondria have a lot to do with that. So exercise helps them be more efficient at what they do. Exercise helps them increase in number. And again, these things affect your overall feeling of energy. So again, sometimes if you're feeling tired and drained and you don't have the energy that you did before, we can start to see these changes that happen even at the cellular level that impact on your metabolism and your energy. So exercise is important. And we can link diet into this as well. A lot of the vitamins that you see, vitamins aren't this sort of magical thing like pixie dust in the ether. Vitamins and minerals are actually cofactors in chemical reactions. They are integral components in the little chemical reactions that happen in our body. So if we're deficient, if we're missing some of these key things, then our body doesn't work as efficiently. So for example, common ones that tend to be missing on the mineral side, one of the most common mineral deficiencies across the board, if you just took all comers, is magnesium. So we need it for a host of different functions. We need it in neurologic function, we need it in other enzymatic processes. It's very important, but it tends to be one of the ones that we struggle with. Another key set of vitamins is actually the full B complex of vitamins. So B complex, yes, you may have heard of B12. B12 is just one of a whole set of B vitamins that do different things. And they all have a tendency to work in different parts of energy production. So a lot of them are actually used in the mitochondria in making of food sources. We use them for other things as well. B12 has its claim to fame in cognitive function and neurologic function. So again, a really important vitamin to have. But these B vitamins, like other vitamins, they have a role to serve in the complex chemistry that happens without us even thinking about it all day long. And what's challenging is even sometimes when people eat a fairly healthy, diverse diet, they may be surprised when they find out that they have deficiencies. So sometimes you have to actually test and measure levels to see if there's a deficiency there. The way we farm now, some of those practices that we have, the ground does not have as much nutrient as it used to. And again, people's dietary habits, their overall health can also affect how things are absorbed. So even if you're putting all the right things in your mouth, you might not be able to harvest from it everything you need for your body. So again, this is where supplementation is sometimes necessary. And there are some things, again, that can be quite helpful. So this is something you may want to explore a little further and do a little bit of testing or a little bit of looking in that regard. And that will help build out that nutritional piece, which helps support the mitochondria. That, along with exercise, can really help with energy levels. So again, diet is very important. And with that, high quality foods, staying away from the ones that are highly processed, and maybe a little bit of supplementation. And exercise is really important to keep those mitochondria functioning and to stimulate muscle, which is your main metabolic driver, one of them in your body, and it keeps you strong and mobile when you're older. From there, other important things, sleep. Yeah, sleep is really important. It is difficult to come by sometimes at certain stages of life, middle age, transitional times. Sometimes sleep kind of goes out the window, but where possible, you want to try to protect your sleep. And this can be very difficult, especially in this era with high levels of stress. Your brain's always going like a ticker tape. You've got your phone and you've got that light coming in your eyes, especially that blue light. The content of the scrolling and the doom scrolling can sometimes be very mentally stimulating. So some of these different things make it difficult for us to get proper sleep in our very highly connected electronic world. One of the things that's worth spending a little time and reading around is maybe using a bit of AI or Google and looking up just some techniques in sleep hygiene. It may look like a very long list. It can be. if you could even pick one thing that resonates with you on that list to help you with your sleep and your sleep habits, it's something you'll need to really invest your effort into, probably for a little while, like a month to 2 months, to really kind of get that new habit to make traction. But it's well worth the time and effort. When we're sleeping, not only is the obvious happening, our body is resting, but the not so obvious things are happening as well. Inside your brain, that's where the new day's information is getting processed and switching from short-term memory to longer-term memory. So if you have tasks that you're needing to learn things about, really trying to get that regenerative sleep is very important. Also, when you're sleeping, it's the time when the brain's lymphatic system, you may have heard of the lymphatic system for like the rest of the body that drains fluid away and things like that. The brain has its own lymphatic system called the glymphatic system, and it does the bulk of its draining, removal of the brain's waste products, etc. at nighttime. So it helps, again, to keep the brain in a healthier state, tries to keep it from getting inflamed. So very, very important to kind of keep an eye on. Serious sleep problems can happen as well too. If you or your sleeping partner have periods at night where you notice that they're not breathing, they have these long pauses. Sometimes you see it a lot more in people who snore, or hear it a lot more in people who snore. But that can be a warning sign of a condition called sleep apnea. And sleep apnea can not only completely disrupt your sleep cycle, you may not even be aware of it. That's the scary thing, is that sometimes even with these awakenings, people don't even become conscious enough to know that they've woken up. And in the morning, they just feel really tired, and they have no recall of waking up in the night. So it can go very unrecognized, but there are sleep tests you can do, and this can be obtained through a doctor's order, or a nurse practitioner can set these up. But again, if you have this extremely non-restful sleep, even if you don't have a sleep partner who can confirm with you whether you're pausing with your breathing or snoring a lot at night, it may be worth exploring that with your care provider and just have a test to be careful. It's not just a nuisance problem. It actually can be a major health problem. Sleep apnea produces quite a bit of strain on the cardiovascular system and is linked to heart attack and other health consequences. So definitely, if you have any possibility of having sleep apnea, you would want to get that looked into. So in general, sleep for everyone, particularly if you have this health problem or potentially this health problem of sleep apnea, it's just critically important. Stress management. Oh, now this sounds fluffy foo-foo, but it's not. Stress management is critically important. In days past, ancestral days, our stress response has allowed us to survive predators and to keep the species going. But in today's modern era, we are not being chased by real saber-toothed tigers. We have digital saber-toothed tigers that never leave us alone. Our phones, emails, text messages, and then we have all the work stress and commuting and financial pressure and everything else. These unrelenting stresses raise cortisol in our system, amongst other things. And in the short term, these are beneficial adaptations to allow us to survive in short periods of stress. Over the long term, though, it does cause some damage to certain parts of the brain, can overstimulate them, and then you can end up actually having a little bit of atrophy or loss of certain parts of your hypothalamus. It can drive your adrenal glands quite hard, and eventually they have a hard time producing the cortisol that they're supposed to produce. And it can have far-reaching effects on other systems, like your cardiovascular system, and raise your blood pressure and give you risk for heart and stroke. Or alternatively, it can impact on your immune system. And this can, again, lead to issues around autoimmune disease or maybe even cancer. So yeah, stress can be harmful. And again, there's certain components of our day-to-day lives we simply can't get away from. And I'm not living in a dream world where I expect people to be able to do that. So we have to find ways to handle it, offload it where we can, and then manage our responses to it when it comes along. So even looking at simple stress management techniques. There's some things that can be done simply, even when you're in the car. So when that driver cuts you off on the way to work and you got a head full of steam, sometimes you can practice breathing techniques. It's a great time. That's where you do your box breathing or other breath work, and that can sometimes be helpful. It actually down regulates that whole fight or flight system where you just get into the road rage. So it's a good thing to consider and add on. Plus, it just makes you happier. And then again, finding time for nature, for exercise, for friends, all those good things. Delegation, whatever you can do to try to manage that stress level and keep it in check. So these things all come together. So these are some of the fundamental things we can do to try to live healthier. So let's sum it all up. What is all that? So it really boils down today. I'm going to just focus on the fundamentals. And again, these are often things that are just so brushed over because it's just so common sense, but common sense isn't common anymore. And that would include, again, healthy nutrition. Again, eat the rainbow. A varied and diverse diet is really important. Key things you want to try to avoid are highly processed foods or foods that are grown in an area that is highly contaminated with chemicals or next to a big industrial plant, something of that nature. So clean, healthy, diverse fruits and vegetables and healthy, lean protein sources. So these are all great ways to get your nutrition. Sometimes nutrition on its own isn't quite enough. So looking a little bit into just your own profile for vitamins and nutrients and minerals, and then supplementing appropriately under guidance of a care provider can go along with that to complement it. On the other side of the balance with nutrition is fitness and exercise. And the key thing is just start where you're at, don't overdo. And you want to try to incorporate a degree of cardio, but what we're noticing more and more is that some component of strength training is really important to try to develop and maintain healthy muscle mass. Not to be big and huge, but actually just to be strong, healthy, and metabolically fit. So again, the muscles have a key role in our metabolism and how our mitochondria function, as well as exercise has direct impacts on the mitochondria all over in our body. So very helpful. So those are a couple of the base fundamentals. And then sleep and stress management, also critically important. From there, there's a whole host of other things you can do, but those are some really key starting points. So if you're early on your journey into wellness, if you're watching aging parents starting to really struggle and you're like, oh, I'd like to see what I can do to try to follow a different path for me, then this is a good time to consider doing this. Give future you a gift. And for those of you who are care providing for folks who are already in that, having some of these changes and some of these losses in function, they may still benefit from very careful supervised exercise, more protein, healthier diet, a little bit of fiber, sometimes some supplementation if they're having issues, and working with them again to try to get them into regular sleep and wake habits. So lots of things we can do for those we love and for ourselves for the future. So that's our session for today. I know we covered quite a bit. And again, please remember that this is not individualized medical advice, especially if you've got health issues or other. You want to make sure you double check all these things with your own personal care provider before engaging in supplementation, big changes in diet, or a very, robust exercise program if you have not yet started. So thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure to have you here. I'm just going to bring up on the screen. We'd love for you to follow our content. So if you've enjoyed what you've watched today, please feel free to scan the QR code and that will bring you into our podcast for regular watching. And also, if you just want some more general information about any of these different topics, we have it on our website as well. And we would encourage you to come visit us there. So with that, I'm signing off for the day. Thank you so much for watching and stay healthy and be well.